Morris City Council regular meeting, Tuesday, October 2nd, 12 p.m. Please stand and be with me on the flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Nelson?
Yes.
Knapp?
Yes.
Recklinko?
Yes.
Goodchild?
Yes.
Glick?
Yes. Motion to approve the agenda. Second.
Motion made to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. First one on the agenda today is a hearing, and it's Prairieview Addition Utility Improvement Project. At the September 18th, 2016 meeting, the council set this as the date and time to hear public comment on plans, specifications, form a contract, estimate cost for the Prairieview Addition Utility Improvement Project. At this time, I'm going to open the hearing and ask if there's any written or oral objections or comments on this project.
Just one comment, just so everybody is aware. That is just short of the 300 foot, that drawing where they're coming off of Holton Drive. It's kind of gonna be a dead end, so to speak, and eventually it's slated to go all the way around back to Holton Drive. So at 300 foot is when, by our code, we're supposed to have a turnaround, cul-de-sac type thing, or somewhere to turn around snow plows, garbage trucks, fire trucks, and that sort of thing. This does not have that turnaround drawn in there. So I would just leave it up to the council if they want to make them put some kind of rock crushing or something for us to be able to turn around at the end. However, if they stay under that 300 foot, which I think it is, they're okay. So in case somebody had a question on that. All right?
Thank you, Dave.
Jason maybe can elaborate on that too.
Yeah, I spoke to Wayne Schofelt yesterday about that. And that's not an issue. It'll probably just be rock, temporary rock turnaround for now.
Okay.
We don't want some paving in because the pavement get tore out at some point, but I think we need just a rock turnaround.
Is there any other written or oral objections or comments on this project?
Is there a start or stop date? Or if you're still in the public hearing, you can close that if you like. I apologize. Go ahead, Jason.
I left those dates off out of the agenda because at the time I was still trying to confirm with Vision Builders their urgency to get it done. So that's why I didn't put any dates in there, but in the specs that Schlofeld created, they did add some dates after conversations with Vision. And for the utility, which is the city portion of it, we're hoping for a completion of November 30th. And then a paving completion would be May 15th of 2019. That still gives us a little bit of time. I don't think that November 30th is gonna be a hard date. If it gets done by November 30th, then great. The only reason it would come into play is if Vision were to decide to start building, constructing, there's gonna come a point when a plumber is gonna wanna hook up to water and hook up to sewer. So if we don't have them in, that delays them. But, that's the date we'll shoot for, and we'll see what we get.
I'm kind of looking at it from the other angle, which is, we get our work done, and for some reason, Vision decides not to do the project. So I think once we commit to concrete, they need to commit to a date to start. And if they don't, then they pay for the concrete. I'd like something in there that way, because that's my concern here, is that we get this half done, and then either it is delayed by another year before they even start, and so now our concrete prices all change, and or we've already spent the money, and they're not gonna. So I'm concerned with the way this is set up. Probably gonna vote no on it for that reason, because I'd like more commitment on their part, that this is our start date, we're gonna start building, and if they don't, they pay for it anyway. I don't mind the city helping, but not just so it can sit there idle for 2 years. So that is my concern.
You brought up concrete prices, concern on their end, because the city's not paying for the concrete.
I thought the city's cost, and then it got paid back.
No, just the underground, so just.
So just the under, okay, you're right.
water, sewer,
I am wrong on that, so, okay.
They pay for the dirt work, they pay for the paving.
You're right, I have that one backwards, so, okay, I'm fine with it, that's fine.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, it does.
I'll ask one more time, is there any written or oral objections or comments to this hearing? If not, I'm gonna close the hearing at this time. Staff's recommending council to follow the suggested schedule. Public hearing on October 2nd, which is today. 2018, the bid lettings October 23rd, 2018 at 10 a.m. Award of the contract is November 6th, 2018. Financial impact of this project will be funded through each utilities improvements budget. The city will be reimbursed 50% of the cost as lots are sold as agreed upon in the development agreement with the developer. And the estimated city utilities is $82,500. Any other questions from anybody? I make a motion.
Motion to adopt resolution 18-30 on plan specification form of contract estimate cost for Prairieview addition utility improvement project.
Is there a second? Motion made and second to adopt resolution 18-30 on plan specifications, form of contract, and estimated cost for the Prairieview addition utility improvement project. Do we have a roll call on that, Beth?
Rexlinko?
Yes.
Fairchild?
Yes, with the corrections that, yeah, I vote yes.
Wick?
Yes.
Knapp?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Motion carried.
It'd be nice to have all those dates start and finish confirmed when we get the bids in November, so we know when people are expecting to do the work.
Yeah, those dates, Rex, will be in the bid documents.
Right, but I'm saying if they sometimes make an exception, they said.
Yeah, we'll have to look at it with this committee, if they can put in a
We'll
different
have to
date.
look and see what the dates are and see what we wanna do.
Okay. Going on to general discussion. And I'll take some time this morning to talk about, in the general discussion area, and it won't take too long, don't get excited. I'll talk about our emergency management program in this town and disaster program. We just went through another flood area that had occurred. I know the fire chief got some emails, police got some emails, I got some emails. Be very honest with you, most of them are positive. But there's a couple of them that I think we need to address, and that is, or a particular area. And that is, one of them is, was concerned about, that caught my attention anyway, concerns, and I've heard them before, of whether we've really got an emergency plan out in that area when it hits, as to how to get there and when. And let me give you an example. This last one is the fact that we knew 2 days, our emergency people knew 2 days ahead of time that this flood was going to hit. The question was, we didn't know when and how big. And the thing that kicked it off was that emergency plan started at 1:30 in the morning in a car accident out here on C60 where there was water over the road. And a girl was going north on Highway 60, flipped her car on her top. And luck would have it, and the Lord was with her, that a young lad behind her was there enough to get her out of the car and actually, I believe, saved her life. Along with that, our emergency program kicked in at that time because within 10 minutes, we had an individual from the emergency department on that same program. So we are well aware of it. Saying that, along with it, I want to go back to PGA Drive and Mahogany Drive out there, was the fact that, why they weren't notified or anything, but coming back after that, the barricades went up at 6 o'clock that morning out there, and I know I surprised a lot of people, including me. But by the same virtue, the reason they went up was for the protection of what we had going off of Willow Creek, damage out there going across the road, and if anybody's seen the current, they would have noticed it. But I just want to say that as Mayor of Lamar's, Iowa, I apologize for the people out there in PGA Avenue and Mahogany Avenue, or Mahogany Drive, for the inconvenience that we caused out there for a matter of 12 or 24 hours, because the barricades went down 24 hours later and was picked up and they could travel again. But the reason they went up was for the public safety of everybody in town, or that particular area. And so what I've done is I've asked Dave Shipper to come in and just say a few words, and Dave, we're not writing letters to Santa Claus or anything here, but just share with them and bring people up to date that we do have an emergency plan. Just down, and it's a good one.
Sure.
And I just wanted to clear the air for everybody that's watching over television, or anybody that's in the audience here, or just to share with them that we do have an excellent emergency plan in this town for the city of Lamar's. Dave.
Okay, I provided you a handout, and I'm not gonna go through that entire handout, because then I would write the letter to Santa Claus, but this is the book. It was actually adopted in 1985, so we've had a disaster plan since 1985. Every 2 years, we completely update the information in it, and everybody gets a new book. We send out about 32 books every 2 years, okay? And this has everything from our plan on how to cover all kinds of emergencies. It's kind of a encompassing document, from fire to flood to tornado to ragbri, which is considered a mass gathering, to a chemical or ammonia leak, to an explosion, to a bombing. All that is encompassed in this plan. And also in this plan, then, each city entity has their actual file in there of their staff, their employees, their equipment, what we have access to, who would be in charge of what, and that sort of thing. Basically, in 1996, the city, under the Code of Iowa, had to recognize somebody as a disaster coordinator, and that was determined to be the city administrator and the fire chief. So if the city administrator's gone, it's the fire chief that's the coordinator over top of all your city departments to make sure we keep things moving and going smoothly. Because life safety is the first thing we worry about, and then we worry about everything else. So everybody kind of works under the coordinator of operations, which would be the fire chief at that point. In that, we have emergency shelters. If we had to displace people from their homes, which initially are Galen Lamar's community and our community wellness center, that's where we would move people in an emergency if we had to tell them to get out of their homes. We don't put them in motel rooms at the Marriott or anything like that. We just put them in shelters that we have established around town. We also have shelters established around town to move our hospital, our nursing homes and things like that. Those things are all in place, all through these agreements in this disaster book. A morgue is also identified. Now, the morgue position or location would be determined at the time of the incident, because you'd want that somewhere relative to where the damage is where you would set up a temporary morgue. We have incident command posts listed in this book, which is Fire Station 1, Fire Station 2, and the LEC. They're 1.5 miles apart from each other. Hopefully one huge tornado wouldn't wipe them all out. Not saying that it couldn't, but that's how we staggered that. For other reasons, those facilities always have electricity, they always have communications, they have kitchens, they have sleeping areas to set up shop and get the city back on its feet, okay? We have readiness levels in our plan, all right? So level 4 is normal conditions like we are today. Normal responses, and we all take care of our own jobs and take care of business. Level 3 is an increased readiness, meaning we have some kind of threat, but no immediate threat or danger to life and health. That could be a tornado watch, flood watch, etc. And then we have level 2, a high readiness, which is a partial disaster plan activation, where we notify the public via radio, social media, newspaper, website. If it's a flood issue, the low-level areas are notified that they should be ready to move out or move their things, and that includes campgrounds, Little League, airport, wastewater treatment plants, and that sort of thing. And then maximum readiness is the full scale. We've had something really hit us hard, and we open up the operations center. We call the department heads to, we'll say it's Fire Station 1, 2, or the law enforcement center, and all the city departments go to their respective buildings and wait for orders on what we want them to do in a systematic way. I did at the first page, put at the bottom just some general flood information with our river here, the Floyd. That is measured by the ODOT building. We actually have a magnet that we can drop into the river, and now there's also on the other side, the downflow side, a digital box that we can read right off our computers or pick up on our phones. So that kind of gives you an idea of the flood stages and what happens when that water reaches a certain level at that DOT bridge, the old DOT bridge. We know what it's going to do around the community already because we've evaluated this before. So you can see the new one at the bottom is 26 foot. So we know when the water gets to 26 foot, Highway 3 will go under at West Lamar's here by Jerome Dreckman's excavating and the vet clinic. That was a new one this year, just here in the last couple weeks. The second page there I gave you is the plan used in recent history. As the mayor alluded to, we have implemented this plan 3 or 4 times in the past. Once was in '09 after our blizzard and heavy snow. We keep track of all city hours and document equipment used so we can maybe get reimbursed by FEMA funds for the funds that the city has expended. We did do that. We did recover a lot of money, and it even replaced the roof on Fire Station number 1 for $35,000 that year. In 2013, many of you remember that flood. That was with the no-till and the corn stalks that plugged the culverts over Memorial Day weekend and flooded our golf course out here at Willow Creek. We had the canopy get tore off under the railroad trestle that year on 4th Avenue Northeast. All that was documented. FEMA did recover a lot of, we did recover a lot of that money from FEMA, replaced the canopy, cleaned up the golf course, played for work. In 2016, as a lot of people in this room will remember, it was an ice cream days weekend. In June, we actually implemented the full activation of the EOC at that point. We called in the city administrator, assistant city administrator, the mayor, all the department heads to Fire Station 1. We had 75 miles of the 78 miles in town that had tree branches or tree limbs down. We had 21 fire calls in that 6 hours for emergencies to people's homes for power outages or trees on houses, things like that. All that was coordinated from Fire Station 1. That happened at 11 o'clock at night, and by 6 in the morning we had this town completely back open. Ice cream days went on without a hitch, and nobody even realized, I think, what had happened during the middle of the night. We cleaned up Foster Park. We had crews assigned to quadrants around the community through this disaster plan, and we had a nice ice cream day celebration, even though some people had to look over some limbs in their front yard that we had moved off the streets. And that brought us to 2018 and this major flooding. As the mayor said, we started watching this on Thursday morning when we talked to the Sioux County officials about the 8 to 11 inches of rain they had in certain areas up there. They had 23 roads closed in Sioux County. They were pumping out of manholes in several communities up there. We even sent a portable pump from Lamar's up to one of our neighboring towns to help them out, pumping out of a manhole. And so there's an itinerary there, kind of a list of how things started on Thursday afternoon and timeframes of calls I made and details of who we spoke with and what was in place. When it did get to the point we knew we were gonna have the massive flooding, Little League was notified on Thursday afternoon, the airport was notified, the police chief was notified, Public Works was notified. By 6 o'clock that night, city staff was put on mandatory standby. The police department was on standby, the firefighters were on standby, Public Works was on standby to help with sandbagging or anything we would have in an emergency situation. Ron Kaiser took care of wastewater. He was notified. He made the notifications to DNR and everybody that he needed to in case we flooded our wastewater plant. We were hoping not to have that problem and flood basements in homes, and we didn't. Everything went well there. As the mayor said, 11:46 that night was our first sign that that water was on its way. It takes about 14 to 16 hours to get down here from Sioux County. 11:46, we had a lady go in the water at C-16 and Highway 60. She was rescued. At that point, we knew that water was going to be at least 22 feet because that's when it goes over that intersection. At 2 o'clock in the morning, Friday morning, the fire department actually drove the trail from Willow Creek. Neil, I went right by your bedroom window, but I didn't wave. We actually drove the trail out by Willow Creek and went in the backside of PGA Drive by Ron Knipe's house to make sure that trail was accessible for emergencies in that area, because with that water coming up, we knew that 4th Avenue Northeast would go underwater. So we checked that trail, we made sure we had access for fire, ambulance, and police. Later on, of course, as the mayor said, that road did go underwater. However, it was still passable with our ladder trucks, which have pumps and they're fire trucks. We could have still drove through there at any time during this flooding situation with the fire trucks. We also have 2 trucks that can come in off the trail to the east. The police chief took the side-by-side home from the police department to haul people. The ambulance crew, day shift and night shift, was notified to go to Cruz's driveway and meet the fire department there with our rescue ranger that has all the medical equipment on it to get somebody out of PGA Drive for a medical emergency. So at no time was anybody in that area not going to be provided if they called 911 with any type of service, whether it was fire, police, or ambulance. We had it covered. We had ways in, we had ways to handle it. Within 24 hours, that water receded. At 6:30 in the morning, we took the barricades down. By 7:30, I had notified the mayor, Councilman Knapp, and Councilman Rexwinkle that that road was open.